The grand ballroom of the Lotus had never been this silent. 200 people stood frozen beneath the chandelier that Madame Kim Voong had bought 40 years ago with the very first profit the little hotel ever made, and not one of them was breathing. At the long marble table in the center of the room, beneath a banner that read, "A New Future for the Waterfront," Victor Lai held a gold fountain pen above a stack of acquisition papers, and beside him, his daughter Cassandra was smiling the smile of someone who has already won. The pen hovered over the signature line. The deal to buy the hotel, gut it, and raise a glass tower in its place was one stroke of ink away from done. A few steps from the table stood a young man in the plain burgundy vest of a front desk clerk. The same clerk half the guests had spent 3 days ordering around without once looking at his face. His name tag said Minh. There was a brass room key in his hand, old and worn smooth, stamped with 3 numbers, 1201. He was not shouting. He was not even angry. He simply looked at the elderly managing director standing by the door, a silver-haired man in an immaculate suit who had just walked in holding a leather folder, and waited. Because a long time ago, in a cramped shop house 2 streets from this ballroom, his grandmother had taught him the only rule that had ever mattered. You do not shout at the people who are wrong. You let the truth walk in through the front door on its own 2 feet. Cassandra Lai finally noticed the clerk standing there. "Excuse me," she said, waving her ringed hand at him like she was shooing a fly. "Staff wait outside. Do you even know who my family is? We are about to own every brick you're standing on. Get out or get the manager." The silver-haired man by the door cleared his throat, and the whole room turned. "Miss Lai," he said quietly, "I am the manager." He opened the leather folder. To understand how a young man in a $10 vest stopped a $1 billion demolition in front of 200 witnesses, and why every powerful person in that ballroom went the color of ash, we have to go back. Back 3 days to a rainy Thursday evening, a revolving glass door, and the first cruel thing Cassandra Lai ever said to the boy she thought was nobody. The lobby of the Lotus smelled of rain and frangipani, and Minh loved it best on nights like this. He stood behind the long teak front desk in his burgundy vest, 26 years old, lean, with dark, careful eyes that most people mistook for shyness. Outside the tall windows, the Singapore harbor blurred under a warm evening downpour, and the doormen were snapping open umbrellas for arriving guests. Minh liked the front desk on a rainy night. People came in wet and flustered and honest before they had time to arrange their faces. You learned who a person really was in the 90 seconds between the revolving door and the elevator. What none of the guests knew, what not one soul in the building knew, except 2 very old men sworn to secrecy, was that the quiet clerk checking them in owned the floor they were standing on. He owned the chandelier, the teak desk, the Harborview suites, and the ground the whole hotel sat on. His name was not Minh Lee, the name on the tag. His name was Minh Voong, and the Lotus, along with the 7 other hotels of the Voong Group, belonged entirely to him. It had belonged until 8 months ago to his grandmother.
Kim Voong had come to Singapore at 19 on a fishing boat with 100 other refugees. No English, no money, and a single change of clothes. She had cleaned rooms in other people's hotels for 11 years, saving every coin until she could put a deposit on a crumbling 3-story shop house 2 streets from the waterfront. She scrubbed its floors herself. She rented out its 8 rooms one at a time. And over 40 years, with a ferocity and a tenderness that became legend in the trade, she had turned that little guest house into the Lotus, a landmark on the harbor, the hotel where presidents and pop stars stayed, the beating heart of a hospitality group worth more than $1 billion. And when the cancer came for her the year before, what frightened Madame Kim was not dying. It was the stack of offers on her desk. Developers circling the waterfront like sharks, each one wanting to buy her hotel, tear it down, and build something taller and colder and more profitable in its place. The loudest of them was a man named Victor Lai. She had called her grandson to her bedside near the end. Minh had grown up in the family's world of galas and boardrooms, but his grandmother had never let it soften him. She'd made him carry luggage and fold linens in her hotels every school holiday since he was 10. Now she gripped his hand with what strength she had left. "I am leaving you everything," she told him. "The hotels, the money, all of it. But I am also leaving you a decision, Con, and I need you to make it with clear eyes. Victor Lai will come for the Lotus the moment I'm gone. He'll offer you more money than you can imagine to let him knock it down. And maybe you should take it. I don't know anymore. I'm too old and too sick to tell if this place is still what I built it to be, or if it has become just another expensive box where the rich are polite to each other and cruel to everyone else." She made him promise one thing.
"Before you decide whether to sell my Lotus," she said, "go and work in it. Not as the owner, as nobody. Stand at the front desk with a fake name and no power, and watch how my hotel treats the people who can do nothing for it. The guests who tip and the guests who scream. The way the managers treat the girls who clean the rooms. That will tell you whether I built a home or just a hotel." So Minh had done exactly that. He had buried Minh Vuong in a drawer, printed a name tag that said Minh Lee, and taken the night shift at the front desk of his own hotel. Only two people knew the truth: Mr. Pereira, the silver-haired managing director who had been his grandfather's right hand for 30 years, and the family's lawyer. For 4 months, Minh had checked in guests, carried bags, unblocked toilets, and covered night shifts for colleagues with sick children. And to his own surprise, he had fallen in love with the view from the bottom, with the doormen and the housekeepers and the kitchen porters, none of whom had the faintest idea that the tired young man on the night desk could buy and sell their entire world with a signature. The person he had come to love most in the building arrived every evening at 9 on the dot, pushing a housekeeping cart that squeaked on its left wheel. Auntie Lotus, everyone called her Auntie Ludi, was 63, Filipina, and had been cleaning rooms at the Lotus for 31 years. Madam Kim had hired her personally back when the hotel had 12 rooms and 1 washing machine, and the two women had raised the place together. Auntie Lotus kept butterscotch sweets in her apron for stressed-out guests, knew which regulars liked extra pillows without being asked, and could fold a bedsheet so crisply you could bounce a coin off it. And every single night, before she clocked out, she went up alone to the 12th floor and tended a room that never had a guest in it. Room 1201. "That's the first room," she'd explained to Minh on one of his early nights when he'd asked why she cleaned an empty suite. "Not this building, the old shop house. When Madam Kim tore down the guest house to build the Lotus, she kept one thing: the very first room she ever rented out, the one that paid for everything after. She had it rebuilt on the 12th floor, exact same size, same little window, same iron bed, same brass key. No key card, she wouldn't allow it. She never sold it, not for any price." Auntie Ludi had smiled, dusting the little iron bed. "I clean it every night so it's ready." Ready for what? I don't know. Minh had stood in the doorway of that plain little room, a monk's cell in the middle of a palace, and felt his grandmother in it so strongly he'd had to look away. That rainy Thursday, at 7 in the evening, the revolving door spun, and the reason for the whole story walked in out of the wet. Cassandra Lai was 25, beautiful in an expensive, effortful way, and she came into the lobby the way weather comes in. 3 staff trailing behind her with luggage, a phone pressed to her ear, and a voice pitched to make sure the whole room knew she had arrived. She wore sunglasses, despite the rain and the hour. She did not slow down at the desk. She simply arrived at it, still talking into her phone, and snapped her fingers at Minh without looking at him. "Presidential suite. The name's Lai."
She held out a black credit card between two fingers. Then, before Minh could take it, dropped it on the desk so he had to reach for it. And I don't want to see any staff in the hallway on my floor. I'm here on business, and I can't have people gawking. "Welcome to the Lotus, Miss Lai," Minh said, in the warm, even voice his grandmother had drilled into every clerk she ever trained. He found her reservation. "I have you in the Harborview Presidential Suite for 3 nights. May I just confirm a card for incidentals?"
Cassandra lowered her phone at last and looked at him, and her eyes did the thing Minh had watched a certain kind of guest do 100 times. They slid over the burgundy vest, the name tag, the tiredness, and filed him instantly under furniture. "Just give me the key, God." Minh programmed her keycard without a word and slid it across in its little paper folder. "You're on the 11th floor. If there's anything at all you need tonight, I'm on the desk until 6. Cassandra took the folder, glanced at it, and frowned. 11? I asked for the top. What's on 12? 12 is mostly plant and one private suite that isn't in service, Minh said carefully. 11 is our finest guest floor. The harbor views are actually better. You're below the roofline. A private suite that isn't in service. She said it slowly, tasting it, the way a certain kind of person tastes the word no. When my family owns this dump, that's the first thing that goes. Empty rooms are money on the floor. She flicked the folder off the edge of the desk, so it fell, and turned toward the elevators. Send up champagne. The good one, not whatever you people drink. Minh bent and picked the folder up off the marble. He was not in that moment angry. He was something colder and quieter and far more patient than anger. He was listening. Because his grandmother had sent him to the front desk to learn who the Lotus truly served. And this young woman, who did not yet know it, had just started teaching him. What Cassandra didn't know, as the gold elevator doors closed on her, was that the tired clerk she just called slow and dismissed as "you people" was the sole reason her father's demolition contract was not already signed. The Lotus was not yet for sale, because the one person who could sell it had been standing 3 feet away in a burgundy vest, deciding. A few minutes later, a young colleague named City came back to the desk from her break, saw Minh's face, and set down a cup of tea for him without being asked. City was 20 and terrified of losing this job. She sent money home to her mother in Johor and apologized when other people bumped into her. She whispered, "She made the bell captain cry already." "Nothing," Minh said, and slid the tea back toward her because she looked like she needed it more. People like that don't need a reason, City. That's the whole point of them. He smiled at her, a real one, the kind almost no guest ever earned. "Don't take a single word she says home with you tonight. You hear me? Not one word. You're good at this job. I've watched you." City flushed with a pleasure she couldn't hide and stood a little straighter for the rest of the shift. Minh didn't know it yet, but by being kind to a frightened girl who could do absolutely nothing for him, he had just planted a seed that would matter enormously in 3 days' time. Kindness, his grandmother used to say, is the only deposit that pays you back on exactly the day you can't afford to be short. He had no idea how hard that account was about to be tested. If you want to understand how much damage one guest can do when everyone around her is afraid to say no, you only had to watch Cassandra Lai move through the Lotus over the next 2 days.
And everyone was afraid to say no, for a specific reason. Word had gone around the staff like a cold draft. The Lai family was buying the hotel. Victor Lai's people had been in and out of the executive offices for weeks. The acquisition was all but done, waiting only on a signing ceremony at the end of the week. Which meant that the furious young woman in the presidential suite was, as far as every bellman and waiter and housekeeper believed, about to become their boss. So when she screamed, they bowed.
When she demanded, they ran. A hotel that had been built on dignity had, in the space of a few weeks, learned to grovel because the people in it were frightened for their jobs. And fear, Minh was learning, is the acid that dissolves a good place from the inside. Cassandra tested the limits the way spoiled people always do, a little further each time to see if anyone would stop her. Day 1, she sent back 3 bottles of champagne as corked, drank a glass from each anyway, and left them for the staff to clear. She ordered a 5-course meal to the suite at midnight and refused it at the door because it had taken too long, then filed a complaint that the kitchen was incompetent. She summoned the concierge, a gentle older man named Mr. Rajan, who had been at the Lotus for 20 years and now served as duty manager, to her room to complain that the harbor was too loud. The harbor. And demanded he do something about the sound of the sea. And all of it, every tantrum, rolled downhill until it landed on the person least able to push back, the housekeeping staff. On Cassandra's floor, that meant Auntie Ludi.
Minh saw the first incident with his own eyes because he'd taken a tray up to 11 to cover for an exhausted room service boy. He stepped out of the service lift just in time to see Cassandra standing in her doorway, holding a white bath towel at arm's length between 2 fingers as if it were roadkill, while Auntie Ludi stood beside her cart with her head bowed. "Look at this," Cassandra was saying. "A stain, a gray mark right here. Do you know what I paid for this room? And you give me dirty towels like I'm at some backpacker hostel?" The mark was a shadow, a crease in the fabric. There was no stain. Are you slow? Is that the problem? Do you understand me when I speak? Dirty towel. Oh, God, they'll hire anyone. "I am so sorry, ma'am," Auntie Ludi said softly, reaching for fresh towels. "I bring you new ones right now, the whole set." "Don't touch my things with those hands." Cassandra threw the towel at her. It caught Auntie Ludi in the face and slid to the floor. "Just get out and send someone competent next time. Someone who speaks English." Auntie Ludi bent to pick the towel up off the carpet, her hands trembling. 31 years, and she bent anyway, because that was the job and she was a professional. Minh set his tray down on a hall table and crossed the corridor before he had decided to. "Ma'am," he said, stepping in and picking up the towel himself. "I'll take care of your linens personally. There's nothing wrong with this staff." He kept his voice level. "There's nothing wrong with these towels either. But you'll have a fresh set in 5 minutes.
Cassandra's eyes narrowed at him, the slow clerk from downstairs, appearing again where he wasn't wanted. "You're the desk boy. Why are you defending the maid?" A nasty little smile. She looked from his tired face to Auntie Ludi's and laughed. "You people really do stick together. Fine. I'll remember your faces." She stepped back into the suite. "When my father owns this place, the first thing we do is clean out the dead weight." The door slammed. Auntie Ludi let out a long breath. "You shouldn't have done that, Minh," she said quietly, gathering her cart. "A boy like you, on the desk, you need this job. Me, I'm old. I'm nearly done anyway. But you have your whole life. Don't make an enemy of that one. Girls like that, their fathers own the world." "Let her remember my face," Minh said. But inside, for the first time, a thin wire of worry had pulled tight. Not for himself, but for the woman beside him. Minh could absorb anything Cassandra threw. He had a wall of ownership and lawyers one phone call away. Auntie Ludi had a monthly wage. A son in nursing college back in Manila she was putting through school one remittance at a time. And 31 years of loyalty to a hotel that a stranger now thought she could throw away like a stained towel. The thing that truly enraged Cassandra, though, the thing that turned careless cruelty into a campaign, happened at the front desk the next afternoon. And it enraged her precisely because for one moment, she was made to feel small in the one arena her money couldn't rescue her from.
A room full of ordinary people who saw her clearly. She had come down to complain about her bill, loudly, in front of a lobby full of guests. "These charges are fake," she announced, slapping the printout on the teak. "I never ordered half of this. You're padding my account because you think my family's rich and won't notice. This is fraud. I want it all removed and I want you," she pointed at Minh, "fired for it."
Minh pulled up the itemized folio calmly on his screen. "Of course, Miss Lai." And he read it out, item by item, in a mild and pleasant voice, in front of everyone. The 3 champagnes sent back after being sampled, the midnight banquet refused at the door, the spa treatments, the personal shopper. He did not editorialize. He did not need to. He simply laid the plain facts on the marble, one after another, and let the watching lobby do the math. A businessman waiting to check in raised his eyebrows. An elderly couple exchanged a look. By the time Minh reached, "And we've already removed the 2 items you mentioned were in error, ma'am, with our apologies," Cassandra's face had gone blotchy because she could feel it. The quiet, collective judgment of a room of strangers who had just watched her be exactly what she was. "Whatever," she snapped, snatching the folio. "You think you're clever. You're a clerk. You'll be a clerk your whole miserable life." She leaned in and lowered her voice so only he could hear it. "I'm going to enjoy watching my father fire every single one of you, especially you and your little cleaning lady friend." She stalked off to the elevators, and Minh, watching her go, understood that the situation had changed. She was no longer merely careless. She had been embarrassed, and people like Cassandra Lai did not absorb embarrassment. They looked for someone weaker to pour it onto. That night, Minh sat in the back office and did a different kind of accounting from the kind on the screen. He listed, in his head, everyone Cassandra had hurt in 48 hours. The bell captain she'd made cry. The kitchen she'd falsely called incompetent. Gentle Mr. Rajan she'd summoned like a servant. Siti she'd called stupid. And Auntie Ludi, struck in the face with a towel, mocked for her English, threatened with her job. He wasn't raging, he was seeing. His grandmother had sent him to find out what the Lotus had become, and here, in the person of one entitled guest and a staff too frightened to defend itself, was the answer. A good house with a rotten floorboard, and everyone tiptoeing around it because the man who'd rotted it was about to sign their paychecks. That, Minh realized, was the real thing his grandmother wanted him to weigh. Not whether the marble still gleamed, whether the people who kept it gleaming were safe. He went up to the 12th floor before he left, the way he'd started doing on hard nights, and let himself into room 1201 with the old brass key that hung on a hook in the back office, the only key to the only door in the Lotus that a card couldn't open. The little room was spotless, as always. Auntie Ludi had been up at 9, the way she was every night, and the iron bed was made so crisply it looked like poured cream. On the tiny writing desk sat the thing Minh came up to see, his grandmother's original guest ledger from the shop house, a fat, water-stained book she'd kept on display in the room she wouldn't sell. He opened it, as he had a dozen times, to the first page, to the very first entry in her careful slanted hand, the first stranger she'd ever given a bed to. And beneath the hotel's founding date, she had written the line that had become the private creed of the whole company, the word she'd made every manager she ever hired memorize. A guest is a stranger we have decided to treat like family. The day we forget that, tear it down ourselves. Don't wait for the men with money to do it. Minh sat on the edge of the iron bed for a long time with the ledger open on his knees. Somewhere 11 floors below, a woman was planning to fire an old housekeeper for sport in a building that a refugee had scrubbed into existence with her own 2 hands. He didn't know yet exactly what Cassandra would do next, but he had a feeling it would be ugly, and he was right. It happened on the 3rd morning, and it was worse than anything Minh had braced for.
At 10:30, Cassandra Lai came out of the elevator into the lobby in a fury that was, this time, entirely manufactured, and she was holding her phone up like a torch. "I've been robbed," she announced to the entire lobby. "Someone has been in my room and stolen my bracelet. My jade bracelet. It's worth $80,000. It was my grandmother's and it is gone." She spun to face the desk where Minh and Mr. Rajan stood. "And I know exactly who took it. The cleaning woman. The old one. She's the only one with a key to my room. She's in there every day, and she's had it out for me since the first night. I want the police. I want her arrested. I want my bracelet." The lobby froze. Mr. Rajan went pale. "Miss Lai, I'm certain there's been a mistake. Auntie Lotus has been with us 31 years. She has never..." "31 years of learning where the rich guests keep their jewelry, you mean?" Cassandra snapped. "Get her down here, now, or I call my father and I promise you the sale closes tomorrow and every one of you is on the street by lunch." And here is where Cassandra Lai crossed the line she could never uncross. Because it was one thing to be cruel to a stranger, and another thing entirely to reach into an honest woman's life and try to brand her a thief.
Auntie Ludi was brought down from the 11th floor, confused and frightened, still in her apron, her cart abandoned in a hallway. When she understood what she was being accused of, her face did something Minh would not forget for a long time. It crumpled with the specific, total shame of a proud person accused of the one thing she had spent her whole life being the opposite of. "I never," she kept saying. "Ma'am, I never touch a guest's things. Never. 31 years. You can ask Madam Kim. You can ask..." And then she remembered Madam Kim was dead, and she stopped and just stood there with her hands shaking. "Search her," Cassandra ordered. "Search her locker. Search her bag. People like her always keep it close." Mr. Rajan was sweating through his suit. He looked at the terrified old woman, and he looked at the furious daughter of the man who was about to own the hotel and hold every one of their livelihoods in his fist. And Minh watched the manager make the calculation that fear forces good people to make. We should call security to review this properly," Rajan began, trying to buy time, trying to do it by the book. "There's no time for a review," Cassandra said. "She hide it. Fire her, right now, in front of me. Or I call my father right now, in front of you." She held up the phone, her thumb over the screen. "Your choice. Her or all of you." Minh stepped forward. "She didn't take anything," he said, and his quiet voice cut across the lobby. "Miss Lai, when did you last see the bracelet?" "This is none of your business, Clerk." "When did you last see it?" he asked again, evenly. "Last night, on the dresser. And now it's gone, and she was the last one in my room, so..." "Every entry to your room is logged," Minh said. "Every key card, every time the door opens, with a timestamp. If Auntie Lourdes went into your room, the lock will say so. And if she didn't, the lock will say that too. It takes 2 minutes to check." It was, in that lobby, an astonishing thing for a front desk clerk to say to the incoming owner's daughter, to answer her not with groveling, but with facts. Cassandra's face went purple. "How dare you? You want to protect your little friend so badly?" She turned to Rajan, cold and precise now, playing the only card she had ever needed. This one put her up to it. "They're in it together. I told you they were friends. I said it 2 days ago. I want them both gone. Her for stealing, him for covering. If they are both still employed when my father walks in for the signing tomorrow, there will be no signing. There will be a lawsuit and a firing, and I will make sure neither of them works in this city again. Do it, now." And Mr. Rajan, decent, frightened Mr. Rajan, with 20 years in and a family and everyone else's paychecks pressing on him, did the thing that would haunt him. He did not say she is innocent. He looked at the floor, and in a voice barely above a whisper, he told Auntie Lourdes to hand in her locker key, and he suspended Minh on the spot pending investigation. And he let hotel security walk a weeping 63-year-old housekeeper out through the staff entrance, into the rain. 31 years ending in the time it takes to sign one form.
By that afternoon, it was official on paper. Auntie Lourdes terminated for theft. Her final wages held pending the police report. A woman who had helped build the Lotus room by room was escorted off its property like a criminal with nothing.
And that detail was not a small one, because Auntie Ludi's son, Marco, was in his final year of nursing school in Manila, and the only reason he was still in it was the money his mother wired home from the Lotus on the first of every month. The letter that fired her for theft didn't just take an old woman's job and her good name. It reached across the sea into a classroom and put a countdown clock on a young man's future. Minh found her at the covered bus stop outside the staff entrance, sitting on the wet bench with a plastic bag of her things in her lap, staring at the harbor she'd looked at for 31 years. "They think I'm a thief," she whispered. "Madam Kim would never. She knew me. She trusted me with the master keys, with room 1201. Her voice broke. Who will believe an old cleaning lady over a rich man's daughter? Nobody. That's who. Nobody." Minh sat down beside her on the wet bench. For a long moment he said nothing. The rain dripped off the awning. "Auntie," he said finally, and something underneath his voice had gone very quiet and very hard. "I need you to trust me for one day. Just one. Don't sign anything they send you. Don't talk to any lawyer but the one I send you. Go home, hug maybe, forgiveness because you did nothing wrong, and be ready to come back to this hotel tomorrow at noon." "Come back for what, Anak? They'll have security throw me out." "One day," Minh repeated, and put his hand over her trembling one. "Tomorrow, you will not have to bow to anyone in that building. I promise you that." That night, for the first time in 4 months, Minh Vung took off the burgundy vest, and he called Mr. Pereira. Mr. Pereira was 68 years old, had run the Vung Group's operations for 3 decades, and had not raised his voice since the Asian financial crisis. When his phone rang near midnight and the screen said Minh, he answered on the first ring. "It's time," Minh said. "I've seen what I needed to see." "Tell me," Pereira said, and Minh told him everything. The towel, the folio, the manufactured theft, the old woman crying at the bus stop in the rain, and the manager who'd folded because he was afraid of a signature. Pereira listened without a word. When Minh finished, the old man exhaled slowly. "Your grandmother," he said, "sent you to the front desk to find out whether the Lotus still had a heart worth saving. It sounds like the answer is complicated. The people have a heart, but fear has its hand around that heart's throat." A pause. "So let me ask you the only question that matters, Minh. Do you want to be angry, or do you want to be right? So completely, so cleanly, that no one can ever undo it." "Right," Minh said. "I want her name cleared so thoroughly that the story that survives isn't that she was accused, it's that she was innocent, and the truth walked in and proved it." "Then we don't make a scene tonight," Pereira said, and Minh could hear the old man smiling for the first time. "We let them make the scene, tomorrow, at their own signing ceremony, and we bring the truth in through the front door." What followed in the small hours of that night and the morning after was a quiet, patient assembling of a truth too heavy for anyone to lift back off Auntie Ludi's shoulders. First, the door logs. Every lock in the Lotus recorded every entry, keycard number, timestamp, direction. Pereira, who had the authority Minh had been hiding, ordered the raw access record for the presidential suite pulled and preserved before anyone thought to touch it. There it was, in cold data, every time the door had opened for the last 3 days. Auntie Ludi's housekeeping card had entered the suite at 9:14 the previous morning for her scheduled clean, and not once after. She had never been inside during the window when the bracelet supposedly vanished. The machine remembered what the frightened people had been too scared to check.
Second, the witness who wasn't afraid. Daniel had said yes with his mouth, and then, being his father's son, had quietly copied the full corridor footage onto a drive and taken it home, because he had watched the old woman get walked out in the rain, and something in him refused to help erase her. When Pereira's people reached him near dawn, Daniel didn't hesitate. He handed over everything. And the footage showed exactly what the door logs implied: 1:31 and never returning. 40 that same morning, a full 2 hours before Cassandra announced the theft. Cassandra herself leaving her suite for the spa, pausing in the hallway to tuck something small and green into the side pocket of her own handbag. Third, and this was the part that made even Pereira set down his tea, the bracelet itself. Because once you have the authority to ask the right questions, the truth stops hiding. A discreet call to the spa's lost property desk turned up a jade bracelet, checked into a locker by Miss Lai the previous morning and never collected, sitting in a numbered box the whole time she was screaming robbery in the lobby. Cassandra hadn't been robbed. She had staged the loss of a bracelet she'd stashed herself, purely to have an excuse to destroy the two people who had embarrassed her. The frame was complete, and every piece of it now pointed back at the framer. But assembling the truth was only half of it. The other half was that a man like Victor Lai does not lose gracefully, and Minh knew that the moment the Lai camp sensed trouble, they would fight dirty.
They did. By mid-morning, word had reached Victor Lai's people that a suspended clerk and a fired maid were somehow making noise about the theft, and that someone senior had ordered the door logs preserved. Lai's lawyers moved at once. They pressed to have the signing ceremony brought forward. Sign first, sort out a minor staffing dispute later, and they leaned on Mr. Pereira. For a few hours, it looked as though money might simply outrun the truth, as though the contract would be signed and the demolition set in motion before anyone with power ever heard an old woman's side of the story. And there was one more pressure point. Cassandra pressed herself. She found Siti, timid Siti, who had been on the desk the night of the folio, and she cornered her by the staff lockers. "You were there," Cassandra said. "You saw the clerk and the maid plotting against me. Say so. Sign a statement." She opened her wallet, and inside was more cash than Siti earned in half a year. Enough to make your problems go away. Or, the smile went cold, stay loyal to a fired thief and a suspended clerk, and see where that gets you when my father owns your contract. For one long moment, Siti thought of her mother in Johor, of the money, of everything she was terrified to lose. And then she thought of a tired young man who had pushed a cup of tea back across the desk toward her and said, "You're good at this job. I've watched you." "No," Siti said. Her voice shook, but she said it. "They did nothing wrong, and Auntie Ludi has fed me from her own apron since the day I started. I won't lie about her. Not for your money, not for any money." She walked away on legs that barely held her, and then, because courage grows the instant you use it, she went straight to Mr. Pereira's office and told him everything, including the bribe, and Pereira wrote it down and dated it and had her sign it as a witness. That was the sharpest edge on the whole case, and Cassandra had handed it over herself. Not only a staged theft, but an attempt to buy false testimony, witnessed by the very girl she'd tried to buy. The emotional low came late that afternoon. Auntie Ludi called Minh from Manila's time zone in her mind, though she was only across the strait. She'd gotten a message that her son Marco's school was asking about next month's fees, and she sat in her tiny rented room and for the first time stopped believing it would ever be all right. "I know you told me to wait, Anak," she said, her voice hollow. "But maybe some things money just wins. Maybe I should sign their paper, take whatever they give me to go quietly, and save what's left for Marco. An old woman can't fight a family like that." Minh stood at the window of the back office, looking up the stairwell toward the 12th floor, and made himself say the hardest sentence of the whole plan. "One more day, Auntie. Come to the ballroom at noon tomorrow. Sit in the back, and I promise you, after tomorrow, you will never again have to ask anyone's permission to keep your good name." Meanwhile, on the surface, nothing changed, which is what made the noose so tight.
Cassandra spent the evening triumphant, telling her friend Tiffany, who'd flown in for the celebration, all about how she'd cleaned out 2 troublemakers in one morning. She had the signing gown pressed, she was insufferable, and she cornered Minh one last time, not knowing he was suspended only on paper, not knowing anything, as he crossed the lobby that night in his street clothes.
She said, delighted. "You're finished here, you know. When my father signs tomorrow, this becomes lie property, and the first 2 names on the termination list are yours and your thieving little aunties. You should have just given me my key and kept your mouth shut. This is my family's hotel now. Well, it will be, at noon." Minh looked at her for a long moment. Everything in him wanted to end it right there. Instead, he let the noose tighten 1 more inch. "You keep saying it's going to be your family's hotel," he said quietly. "Say that tomorrow, at the ceremony, into the microphone, in front of everyone. Tell the whole room your family owns the Lotus." "I'll shout it from the stage, loser," Cassandra laughed. "Be there. Watch me sign. It'll be the best day of my life." She walked off, delighted with herself. She has no idea, Minh thought, that I just asked her to stand at a microphone and announce she owns something she's about to lose in front of 200 people. And she said yes. Late that night, an unexpected ally knocked on the back office door, Mr. Rajan. He had not slept. He set his hotel master key on the desk between them and could barely get the words out. "I knew she didn't do it," he said. "Auntie Ludi. I knew it in my gut, and I let them walk her out anyway because I was scared of that family, and I told myself I was protecting everyone's jobs. I felt sick ever since." He straightened his tired shoulders. "I've been at the Lotus 20 years. Madam Kim hired me. I don't know what you and Mr. Pereira are planning for tomorrow. I don't understand how a suspended clerk is planning anything. But whatever it is, I'll stand up and tell the truth about what I saw in that lobby. On the record, in front of the lies. Let them fire me. Some things cost too much to keep buying." Minh looked at the master key on the desk, and then at the frightened, decent man who had finally found his spine, and he felt the last piece slide into place. The door logs, the corridor footage, the bracelet in the spa locker. A brave security officer, a brave girl, and now a repentant manager willing to testify. Every thread of the truth was in his hands, and one arrogant young woman had promised to stand at a microphone tomorrow and hand him the last one herself. There was only one thing left. Minh reached up to the hook on the office wall and took down the old brass key to room 1201, and he put it in his pocket. Because tomorrow, for the first time, he was going to need his grandmother in the room. At noon the next day, the grand ballroom of the Lotus gleamed. Beneath the 40-year-old chandelier, 200 chairs had been set in tidy rows. There was a long marble signing table, a bank of press cameras, a banner reading "A New Future for the Waterfront," and a scale model up on an easel of the cold glass tower that was meant to replace the hotel. At the table sat Victor Lai, silver-haired, expensively still, the kind of man who would learn that the quietest person in the room is usually the one who owns it, flanked by 2 lawyers. Beside him, radiant in a pressed white dress, sat his daughter Cassandra. In the front row sat executives, reporters, and a nervous Mr. Rajan. And in the very back, in a plastic chair by the door, in her good church blouse, with a plastic bag of her things still in her lap, sat a 63-year-old housekeeper who did not understand why the young clerk had begged her to come, only that he had. The ceremony began. A Lai executive spoke about revitalizing the waterfront. Victor Lai said a few gracious words about honoring the legacy of the late Madame Vuong, and Auntie Ludi flinched at her employer's name in that man's mouth. And then, because she could never resist a stage, Cassandra rose to say a few words of her own.
"My family has been buying and building this city for 30 years, she said into the microphone, smiling at the cameras. "And today, we add its most famous address to the collection." She glanced, with a small, cruel smile, toward the back of the room where Auntie Ludi sat, and then toward the side wall where Minh stood in his burgundy vest, having walked in with the staff. But sentiment doesn't pay for anything. This hotel? It's ours now. Everyone in it works for us, or they don't work at all. She sat, pleased. Victor Lai uncapped his gold fountain pen and held it over the signature line. And at exactly that moment, the great doors at the back of the ballroom opened, and Mr. Pereira walked in. The old managing director did not hurry. He crossed the room in his immaculate suit, holding a leather folder, and something about the absolute certainty of his walk made the whole room go quiet. He stopped at the head of the table, turned to Victor Lai, and spoke in a voice that carried to every corner. "Mr. Lai, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Pereira. I am the managing director of the Vuong Group." He set the folder on the marble. "And I'm afraid this ceremony cannot proceed, because the document in front of you has not been signed by the owner of the Lotus, and it will not be." Victor Lai's pen stopped. "The estate signs today. That was the arrangement. The heir has never so much as shown his face. He authorized the sale through counsel." "The heir authorized nothing," Pereira said. "The heir asked me to keep his seat warm while he made up his own mind. He has now made it up." He turned and looked across the room to the side wall at the young man in the burgundy vest. Perhaps he should tell you himself. 200 heads turned. Cassandra's laugh came out as a confused little bark. "That's the desk boy," she said. "That's the clerk, the one I told you about, Daddy, the troublemaker. He's a nobody."
Minh stepped away from the wall. He did not hurry either. He walked to the front of the ballroom, past the scale model of the tower, past the cameras, and he reached up and unclipped the name tag that said Minh Lay and set it down on the marble table. Then he took from his pocket a worn brass key, stamped 1201, and set it beside the tag. "My name is Minh Vuong," he said. "Kim Vuong was my grandmother. She left me the Lotus, all 8 hotels, and the group that owns them." He looked at Cassandra, and his voice did not rise at all. "For the last 4 months, I've been standing at the front desk of my own hotel under a false name, because my grandmother asked me to find out how this place treats the people who can do nothing for it, before I decided whether to let your father tear it down." He picked up the brass key and closed his hand around it. "You've spent 3 days teaching me the answer." The whole room turned the color of ash. Victor Lai set down his pen very slowly. Cassandra had gone white to the lips, and Minh could see the pieces slamming together behind her eyes. The towel, the folio, the fingers snapped at a slow clerk. "This is my family's hotel now. Enjoy your last night, desk boy." Every cruelty delivered to the one person on earth who owned the ground she stood on. "So," Minh said, turning to the room, "since we're all here, and since the cameras are already on, let's finish the ceremony properly. Just not the one that was planned." He nodded to Pereira, who gestured to a technician, and the large screen behind the easel, meant to show renderings of the glass tower, flickered to life instead. "Yesterday morning," Minh said, "a member of our housekeeping staff, Lourdes Bautista, 31 years at this hotel, hired by my grandmother herself, was accused of stealing an $80,000 bracelet, marched out of this building in the rain, and fired for theft." He let that sit. "So let's do what no one in this building was brave enough to do yesterday, because they were all afraid of the family that was about to sign their paychecks." The screen showed the first exhibit, the door lock log for the presidential suite, plain rows of numbers. Every door in the Lotus records every entry. Here is Auntie Lourdes' housekeeping card entering Ms. Lai's suite at 9:14 a.m. for her scheduled clean, and leaving at 9:31. And here, he pointed, is every entry afterward. She never went back in. She could not have taken anything during the window Ms. Lai described, because she was never in the room. The lock remembers, even when frightened people don't check it. The screen changed. Silent corridor footage, time-stamped. This is the 11th floor hallway.
Here's Auntie Lotus, in and out at 9:14 and 9:31, exactly as the log says. And here, the footage jumped to 8:40 a.m., is Ms. Lai herself, 2 hours before she cried theft, stepping into the hall on her way to the spa and tucking something small and green into the side pocket of her own handbag. A murmur went through the room. Cassandra half rose from her chair. "Sit down, please," Minh said, not unkindly. "We're almost done."
The screen changed a final time, a photograph of a jade bracelet in a numbered spa locker. This was recovered this morning from the spa's lost property store. It was checked in by Miss Lai the previous morning under her own name and never collected. He turned to face Cassandra directly. "You weren't robbed, Miss Lai. You hid your own bracelet so you'd have a reason to destroy the 2 people who embarrassed you." And then he looked at Siti, standing pale and steady against the wall, who nodded once. "When you were afraid the truth might come out, you offered a 20-year-old front desk clerk half a year's salary to sign a false statement. She said no. She reported it. That's not a bad temper anymore." The ballroom had gone from murmuring to a hard, turning silence, turning against the girl in the white dress. "There's more, and it's for your father," Minh went on, and turned to Victor Lai. "But it's simpler. You came here to buy a landmark, knock it down, and put up that." He gestured at the cold glass model on the easel. "You were told the heir would sign because the heir didn't care. The heir cares." He picked up the acquisition contract off the marble table, and without any drama at all, tore it once down the middle and set the halves down. "The Lotus is not for sale. It was never for sale. There is no arrangement, there is no ceremony, and there is no tower." Victor Lai rose, gray-faced, one hand raised in the old, smooth gesture of a man who had never met a problem money couldn't dissolve. "Mr. Vuong, let's be reasonable. You're young, you've made a point, I respect it. But everything has a number. Name yours. We can make this, and your staffing difficulty, disappear before these cameras file a single story." He looked around the ballroom, at the frightened staff along the walls, at the reporters, at the old housekeeper in the plastic chair by the door. She built this place out of nothing because a stranger once treated her like she mattered when she could do nothing for them. He set his hand flat on the torn contract. "She asked me one question before she died." He looked at Cassandra and then at her father. "For a few days, I wasn't sure. Then I watched a room full of good people bow to a bully because they were scared, and I watched 2 of them refuse to. That's my answer. It's worth saving." The whole room had heard it. A billionaire, in front of 200 witnesses and a bank of cameras, trying to buy the owner of the hotel barely a minute after learning who he was. A few people actually gasped at the nakedness of it. Minh didn't argue and didn't shout. He simply let the offer hang in the air until its own ugliness filled the room. Then he turned to Cassandra for the last time and delivered the payoff, quietly, beat by beat. "So here's how today ends. The sale is dead. My counsel will confirm it in writing this afternoon. The false police report against Lourdes Bautista is withdrawn as of an hour ago. And the evidence you saw, the staged theft, the attempted bribe, is now with our lawyers, who will decide what obligations we have to hand it to the authorities. That part isn't up to me anymore. It's up to the law you assumed didn't apply to you." He paused. "And you will not be finishing your stay at the Lotus. Your bags are already at the door." Cassandra, who had perhaps never once in her life heard the word no, finally heard it, and it broke something in her face. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. "Do you know who my family is?" Minh looked at her almost gently. "That's the thing, Miss Lai. I do." He set the brass key back in his pocket. "The question was always whether you knew who you were talking to. And you never asked. Because you never once looked at the people you were being cruel to.
The maid, the clerk, the girl at the desk, the manager. You only ever looked at what they could do for you. That's why you lost. Not because your family isn't rich enough, because you weren't kind enough. Cassandra looked around the ballroom for someone to save her. She looked for her friend Tiffany, who had flown in for the celebration, and found her quietly gathering her own coat, unable to meet her eyes, a flicker of shame on her face. She looked for her father, and found Victor Lai already turned half away, murmuring damage control to a lawyer, calculating his own survival, because that had always been the only language the family truly spoke. And in that moment, Cassandra Lai understood something that would follow her a great deal longer than any headline. That she had spent her whole life surrounded by people, and not one of them was standing with her now, because she had never once stood with anyone else. Security, real security, moving on Pereira's quiet nod, began to walk toward the table. Not for an old housekeeper this time. For what it's worth, Minh said, quieter now, almost kind. This didn't have to be your story. If you'd just said thank you that first night, if you'd left Auntie Ludi alone, or been decent to City, or to any single person who could do nothing for you, you'd be walking out of here today with a hotel your father bought you. You had every advantage there is. The only one you refused to use was the one that's free. But Minh wasn't finished, because a good ending is never only about who falls. It's about who rises.
He stepped down from the head of the table, walked the length of the silent ballroom, past the cameras and the torn contract and the model of a tower that would now never be built, all the way to the plastic chair by the door. And he knelt down in front of Auntie Ludi, who was crying and trying not to, crushing the plastic bag of her things in her lap. "Auntie," he said, and his own voice finally cracked. "I'm sorry. I couldn't tell you. I made a promise to a stubborn old woman that I'd keep my name in a drawer until I understood her hotel." He took her worn hands in his. "You want to know what taught me the most in 4 months? It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a butterscotch sweet from an apron, and a woman who cleaned an empty room every single night for 31 years, just because my grandmother once asked her to. You kept room 1201 ready when no one was watching, and no one would ever know. That's the whole thing. That's what she meant." He stood and turned to the room. "Mrs. Lourdes Bautista is reinstated, effective the morning she was walked out, with full back pay, the theft record expunged, and a written apology from this company printed wherever the accusation traveled." He drew a breath. "And as the first act of my grandmother's estate, I'm establishing the Kim Vuong Award, given every year at every hotel in this group, to the staff member who best shows character to a guest who can do nothing for them in return. Auntie Ludi, you're the first recipient. And the endowment behind it is the money this company will not be spending on lawyers to fight the lies, because there's going to be nothing to fight." Then he found City against the wall. "The night I knew exactly how this would end," he said, "was the moment you told a very rich, very frightening woman that you were not for sale, when saying yes would have solved every worry you have. He named her the new head of guest relations training for the Lotus, on the spot. The person who would teach every new hire what the front desk was really for." City pressed both hands over her mouth. A few feet away, Daniel Ong, the security officer who'd refused to erase the footage, and Mr. Rajan, who'd found his courage a day late but found it, were both blinking hard. The ballroom, which had been so silent, broke. The staff along the walls were the first on their feet. The bellmen, the waiters, the housekeepers, and then the reporters. And then, sheepishly, even some of the executives. All of them clapping for a young man in a burgundy vest and an old woman in a church blouse, in a hotel that had, for one morning,
remembered exactly what it was for. Auntie Ludi hugged the boy she'd fed sweets to for 4 months, and neither of them said anything, because they didn't need to. At the back, quietly, Victor Lai and his lawyers were escorted out one door. Cassandra was escorted out another, past the very front desk where she dropped a credit card on a Thursday night. No longer the incoming owner of anything, just a young woman who'd never been told no, and had now been told it by an entire ballroom at once. As the door swung shut behind her, the last thing she saw was the clerk she'd called a nobody, standing beneath a 40-year-old chandelier, lifted up by a room full of people who had just discovered that the quietest, most powerless-looking person in the building had been the one who owned it all along, and the kindest.
In the weeks that followed, though the cameras would only ever capture that one morning, everything rolled out just as Minh had promised. The sale collapsed for good. The glass tower model went into a storeroom. Auntie Ludi's benefits were restored and backdated, and her son Marco finished nursing school without missing a single fee. Mr. Rajan kept his job and his conscience and became the fiercest defender of the housekeeping staff in the building. And on the 12th floor, room 1201 stayed exactly as it was. The plainest room in a palace, the little iron bed made crisp every night, the water-stained ledger open on the desk to a line in a refugee's slanted hand about strangers we decide to treat like family. Minh kept working the front desk 2 nights a week. He said it kept his grandmother's question fresh, but he stopped hiding the name. Cassandra Lai had a billionaire father, a suite on the 11th floor, and a white press pressed for a signing that never happened. Auntie Ludi had a squeaky cart, a pocket full of butterscotch, and 31 years of treating strangers like they mattered. Only one of them still had their dignity when the doors of that ballroom closed.
So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. Was Minh right to stay undercover for 4 whole months and let it get this far? Or should he have revealed who he was the very first night, the moment she snapped her fingers at him? Tell me below. And be honest about this too. We've all, at least once, looked straight through the person behind a desk or pushing a cart and decided, without a word, that they didn't count. If you believe class is about how you treat the people who can do nothing for you, that the way you speak to a housekeeper says more than the suite you booked, then hit subscribe and stay for the next one. Because next time, we're going into the kitchen of a 3 Michelin star restaurant, where the owner's arrogant son screams at a silent dishwasher and throws a plate at the new line cook, never once suspecting that the quiet person scrubbing his pans is the anonymous inspector who holds every one of his stars in her hands. You won't believe how that one ends.